My name is Loretta, and thank you for making it to today's meeting. Today's meeting is going to be about writing a personal statement for the upcoming ERAS application, and it's going to be a Q&A session. So, um, especially those
Yeah,
applying.
resident application.
Yeah, so hopefully, everyone who is applying this year and is at this meeting, you have your questions for our guest speakers who are also Kainji members and their residents as well. So I'm just going to introduce the speakers we have today and just check if they're here. Um, Dr. Sheung is a third year pathology resident. Hi, Dr. Sheung. Dr. Sheung, you're here, right? I see his name, so I know he's here. Um, so Dr. Sheung is here. And we also have here Dr. Julia is supposed to be here. I see she's on here as well. We also have Dr. Julia is a second year neurology resident. And Dr. Dupe is here as well. She's a second year pathology resident, as well as Dr. Obianuju, and she's a first year pediatric resident. So the way this is going to work is pretty much once I stop talking, go ahead and ask questions. You can also put questions in the chat box, and each resident will do their best to, give you their own suggestions to your questions or answers. Yeah. Okay. So who wants to go first? Who has a question? Please go ahead. So, okay, what I'm going to do is while you guys maybe are taking some time to figure out what questions you have, I'm going to allow the residents that are here to just maybe give a 10 minutes, however long, 10 minutes or less, breakdown of when they wrote their personal statement, the pertinent information that they tried to make sure was within the personal statement, so that way when the programs would read it, it would convey to the program who they exactly were as a person and what they were looking for and how they were a good fit for that particular program. So, Dr. Julia, if you don't mind, would you like to just go first and just give us a quick rundown of when you wrote your personal statement? What was your, what was the idea behind it and what were you trying to convey to the programs through your personal statement? Did you do it through a story or what approach did you take?
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me here. So, in terms of the personal statement, so when I wrote mine, in general, like, you want to include like a brief overview, like just a big picture of who you are, your strengths, and your education or your work experience that you've had in the past and you have in the present. And also, you want to highlight skills that you also have in terms of how you can be a team player. I mean, this is like a big summary of your CV, right? Like you have a CV, you write all those stuff, but your personal statement, you have to hit on point to sell yourself. Like you have to sell yourself because they're gonna read it. They're gonna say how you're a team player, how you're like a leader. It doesn't matter if you've had a leadership position or you've held any leadership position, but you have to hit some points to say that you're a leader. Of course, you've worked with people in a team and you've, led in one way or the other. And also, yeah, so basically that's just points to hit on your strengths, like
Mhm.
sell yourself and um, let the person that's reading it kind of get a big picture and understanding of who they're about to call for an interview or who they're gonna be hiring for this job, you know.
Yes.
So I think that's basically the what we should all have. But Kenji have a great team for personal statement, and if you write something, they'll kind of tune it into what it is supposed to be. They'll kind of like arrange it for you and make it look more presentable. I think we all use that service as well. So, but first you have to hit points on this. So because sometimes they'll ask you to bring your CV as well, because they have to like look at your CV and like bring everything together and kind of tell you more.
Yes. Okay. I actually have a question. For me, for example, writing my personal statement, I prefer to do that through a story. Um, and I am lucky in the sense that after writing it, Dr. O is the one who reviews the personal statement and he tweaked it and he still conveyed what I was trying to say, but obviously just much, much, much better. Um, but when we talk of leadership, when we talk of, for example, I'm interested in applying to pediatric residency programs. And my background story I kind of used was just seeing certain family members go through, certain hardships with their health, and there was a story behind that. How do you within that personal statement, because I think this is where I struggled, within that personal statement, still relay, oh, I'm interested in pediatrics, but not make it corny, but at the same time, relay that I'm interested in pediatrics and relay like you're a leader and all of those things. Like, how do you make it tactful within the personal statements without the reader losing interest and also it fitting into the story? I don't know if you can give an example of when you wrote yours, how you tried to like put all those things together.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think most people, have like a story, your own, your own personal story that you want to tell. Like for me, I was going into neurology. I had my own personal story, for example, from my family. I was like, my grandmom had stroke, stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be true, but just
Mm-hmm.
because I'm applying there, I just like bring a story. Um, but so in terms of taking your own personal story and then bringing it into the specialty that you're applying, I mean, you have to look for a way to make it match so they will see that you have passion or you have a heart for this specialty, that your heart is here. This is why you're going in there. Um, for example, you can like say a story about something that doesn't add up to the specialty you're applying unless you have a way of tying it in together. I mean, you can use a real life experience, but you have to look for a way to tie it to the specialty so you can prove to them that you really love the specialty and that's where you want to go. I mean, there are a bunch of stories out there. People cook stories, uh, you know. Uh, yeah, but some people apply to different specialties, so you have to like have different stories. You know what I mean? Like you can't
Yeah.
have one personal statement and one story. But if it's like a personal story that doesn't involve like the specialty, let's say um, how you struggled for your personal self and it made you a better person in terms of your work ethics and being a leader or being very focused. That's kind of a broad story that can cover most specialty because it's your personal self and it builds your person. But if it's a story that it's like somebody fell sick or you help this group of people, maybe you help children and you just love it. That's specific to a specialty. It's not like specific to yourself as a as a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. That helps actually. So I'm gonna ask Dr. Dope to see or ask her to please shed some light on her own personal statements and how, what the content of her personal statement was, so that the programs she was applying to could get to know her through her personal statement, and as well feel that she's a good fit for the program. And after Dr. Dupe, we'll now take a little break to take questions, and then we'll move on to our other resident guest speakers. Um, so Dr. Dupe, are you here? Okay, I don't think she's on yet. All right. So I'm going to move on to Dr. Obianuju. Dr. Obianuju, do you mind telling us about when you wrote your personal statement, what the content of your personal statement was, and how did you make it personal to you, so that the program will know you as a person just from reading your personal statement, at least for the most part, and also feel like we want her in our program because she's a good fit.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, sounds good. So I mean, for me, I had kind of, yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. Sorry, my manners out the window. So for me, like I had kind of chosen pediatrics like a long time ago. Like I knew I wanted to be a doctor when I was 6. I knew that I wanted to do pediatrics by the time I was around 12 or 13. So since then, I've kind of been collecting experiences, if that makes any sense. Like I have been getting to know more about the field of pediatrics, working with as many pediatricians that I could be exposed to, working with children in general. So my personal touch just came from that, basically. Like, I talked about, first of all, growing up and, knowing when at 6 years old what happened and why I wanted to become a physician. Then I dived into talking about specifically like pediatrics, because I had known since I was like 12 or 13 that I wanted to do pediatrics, and I talked about the first experience. So for me, it was kind of just like showing them, the moment in which I decided on this specialty. And okay, you don't have to have decided it by 12 or 6. I mean, I was early. But I mean, I showed them, okay, this is the moment I decided on this specialty. This is the story around those moments. And then this is how, since then, I've kind of progressed in medicine into, coming into my clarity and sureness about this specialty. So my own was kind of like a progression story from like a child, or well, I guess from the moment of 6 that I decided I want to be a doctor up until now, and how all these different things have tied together. And basically I did that progression story, and then I ended up talking about at the very end, the things that I look forward to accomplishing with residency in this field and things like that, what kind of physician I hope to be, what kind of goals and aspirations I have. So that was kind of how I approached it. It was a progression story for me. So, I mean, there's so many different ways in which you can approach a personal statement. But I like the idea of them like kind of following me through my journey of medicine. From when I started to want medicine to the moment that I finally decided on pediatrics, and then to the moment that I went through medical school, all the things that I did, and then how I was able to and then what I now hope to accomplish with the future coming forward. So that was pretty much it for me.
Thank you so much. That actually was very helpful. So what I'm going to do is just mention Dr. Victoria Durojaye is here. She just joined us, and Dr. Chinyere Christiana is also here. They joined us. Dr. Victoria is an IM resident, and Dr. Chinyere is a pediatric resident as well. So we're going to take a quick break just to allow for questions. And I can see before the attendees will ask their questions, I just want to read something in the chat box. And someone had asked the question that if you want to apply to 2 specialties, for example, pathology and internal medicine, how does one address that in the personal statement? And Dr. Sean responded that he would advise for the individual to write 2 different personal statements tailored to each specialty. And I believe Dr. Victoria also mirrored the same sentiment. She said create separate personal statements for pathology and internal medicine. And Dr. Sean added that he actually had 1 personal statement for each program. So, you can write as many personal statements as you want. So if anybody has any questions, we'll take 10 minutes to, ask questions and the residents will answer. Then we'll move on to the other residents so that they can give us a brief overview of their own personal statements. Sorry. So please ask questions.
I think somebody asked a question
On the chat.
on the chart.
I think I just read the one that they asked. It was just one person that asked. So yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
good
Hi,
morning.
Ochiko.
This is Ochiko. Yes, so my question is I had the pathology residents here, so I wanted to ask that what is the special thing that they look for a pathology application, or what is the thing that someone can work on now to improve their application for pathology, residency in pathology? Yeah.
Okay. So Dr. Shehu, do you mind answering this question since you're a pathology resident in-house?
Oh, sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, and I said that to apply to pathology, residency in pathology, how can I improve my application? What is the extra thing or what's special that they will look for in my application for
Okay,
pathology residency? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's it. I think for pathology, it's more like um, like every other specialty. So things like observership, research experience, interest in the specialty. These are some of the things that um, everyone should try to do. I understand that sometimes it's very hard to do everything because for instance, as international medical graduates, getting observership in pathology can be very challenging. But I think we can always work on uh, this will also kind of like depend on the individual. It's an individual thing. So it depends on where you are, what you are doing right now. But I think that doing research, having publication, doing very well on the USMLE, writing a winning personal statement, um, and then trying to portray your CV out there. These are some of the things that you can do.
Okay, I have a question. So I know that for pathology, for example, it's encouraged that you show focused interest. So for example, if you're doing research, it should be pathology related, observerships, having observed the pathologist. But what if, for whatever circumstance, the person is not able to get that research fellowship in pathology, or observe a pathologist but has other experiences, maybe even has other research experiences but just not with the pathologist? Does it make it still more difficult for the person to be competitive, or does it make it more difficult, yeah, for the person to be competitive for a pathology residency spot?
So I don't really think that make it more difficult for you. I think the reason why pathology as a specialty likes people to do something tailored to pathology is because we are just worried that most people get into pathology because they think it's a good backup specialty. And pathology can be a little bit different from other specialties in terms of the training. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you come in, most of the things you are introduced to are things that you probably don't know anything about. And so you need to really be interested. I've seen people get into pathology and then after 1 year, they just don't really feel it. They say, look, I don't think I want to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
so for most programs, when they are interviewing, they are just trying to see people who actually have a passion for pathology. You are not applying because you can't get into internal medicine or you can't get into some other specialty and you're using pathology as a backup. So that's why they try to see like what is it that you have done that can actually prove to us that you have an interest in pathology. And most people may not really have it, you know. Some people are really interested in pathology, but then for some reason, they may not be able to do observership in pathology.
Yeah.
For instance, when when I was applying, I think I like kind of like observership in children emergency, and I was able to work my way to go to the pathology department and do like maybe 3 weeks of observership because then I was doing a PhD program, and so I just used like some connection to like talk to the people in pathology. It wasn't really official, but at least I was just trying to show my interest. And so what I advise people to do is choose what you have. If you can get something that is like directly related to pathology, I'm sure you can always do something that you can show an indirect connection to pathology. And so if you can do that, all these things, everything you do really counts. And it's just about you trying to emphasize those things that you think are going to be more interesting to the folks in pathology compared to just putting everything out there and then somehow they are trying to decide whether, oh, okay, it looks like the way this person has written, maybe this person really wants to do internal medicine, but it's just applying to pathology. So we don't really want someone who is a misfit for the specialty. And so that's what I'm going to really say about this.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if this is necessarily a good question, but for example, again, to go the pathology residency route again, through a personal statement, is there a way or how would it come across that this person is not really interested? Like, what would a pathology personal statement, you
Okay.
know?
Can I come in?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Dokwe. I'm a
Hi.
pathology resident. Okay,
Hi.
so yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. For me, I didn't have a research. I didn't do observership. And yeah, pathology is kind of tough depending on okay, what exactly am I supposed to say? I used NYSC experience and I used medical school experience, and that's what I put in my personal statement. I told them how I loved pathology because I was able to diagnose that I was AS. I talked about the solubility test, what I did. Then I talked about NYSC, how I was able to get glucometer, how I ran a small mini lab to help the community. And I noticed in most of my interviews that was what they were focused on. That you mean you actually had a lab? But like Nigeria, it's not like really a lab.
Yeah.
You just have a glucometer. I did blood grouping, so I focused on telling them about the blood group test, how I did it for the people and everything. That was all I had. I didn't have observership. I didn't have anything. But I focused on more like clinical lab.
Mm-hmm.
Just that was just the inkling. And I also talked about malaria and what I did. So I just used medical school and NYSC.
Okay.
And that was what they focused on in the interview. So you can just switch it a little bit. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, thank you so much. That's actually this is the first time I'm hearing that aspect of things because when I've heard about pathology, I hear about the observership, the research, which are obviously very valid points, but
Mm-hmm.
this is a different side, which I think there are people that probably this is the kind of experience they have. So this is nice to hear, and I think it would be helpful for a lot of people, even including me, even though I'm not applying for pathology. Okay, so Dr. Georgia said for any specialty, find the find the main point of that specialty, the characteristics you need to possess to be in that specialty, then those keywords need to show up in your personal statement. So,
I'm Sorry. Hi. Dr. Bianiju here. Yeah, I completely support that. You definitely need to find out the goals of the specialty, and if any way, if you don't personally the doctor was saying previously, if you don't personally have anything like research and things like that, that shouldn't make you fret. Just work whatever your personal experiences are into the goals of that particular specialty. So even if you have to finesse some words around a little bit, even the way she talked about the lab, and even if it was not really a lab, but you have to make whatever you have stand out and make it something that they will be interested in finding more about.
Okay. So, because we understand that, which is, the specialty you're applying to, what are the characteristics, or what are the things you are looking for, have that, put that in your personal statement. But I think where people might struggle, even including myself sometimes, is articulating those words into, a personal statement. So I know I can go, for example, let's say, for example, if somebody is applying to family medicine, you go on the AFP website, you kind of read a little bit about what a family medicine physician does, what are the characteristics they should have, and all these other things. And of course, find ways to put that in there. For you guys, what was your methodology? Like, how did you, and I'll allow Dr. Obiano to answer this as well as Dr. Chinyere. How did you guys, integrate? First of all, how did you guys first of all say, okay, these are the characteristics you're looking for, either in a pediatric person, pathologist, internal medicine person, and how did you take that and integrate it into your personal statement so that it comes through? What was your methodology of doing that? Because I think that's where people might struggle as well.
So I mean, this is where networking is super important, I think. Yes, you can go and read the AAP website with all the convoluted words and stuff like that about what the specialty wants, and then you're not aware of how exactly you're going to put this in. I think this is where networking is important. You have to talk to people who, if you happen to have people, I mean, you have us as resources now who are in the specialty, who got into the specialty, or anybody who are upper years in specialty. It's important to kind of have, talk to them. About the specific programs you're thinking about or whatever, or reach out to people, see if anyone will get back to you and find out what it was, what it was about, like what it was that stood out in their personal statement, maybe tailored to that particular program, or maybe tailored in general to all pediatric programs. But I mean, for one, I think the biggest thing at the end of the day is that when someone reads your personal statement, it needs to come across that you care about the specialty you're applying to. If that doesn't come across, no matter how much you try to tailor it to specific things from AAP website, you are not going to get across. It's very important to be able to distinctly tell them somehow that you are interested in that particular specialty. I mean, we're just giving you an example of maybe how to do it by integrating certain things that the AAP is looking for or whatever, but that's not always necessary in a sense. If you're not able to do that, just do your very best to communicate that I am interested in this specialty. These are the reasons why. These are things that I have done to show that interest in the specialty. And I mean, hopefully that is good enough for whatever program is going to pick your state, is going to pick you for interviews and things like that. So, but I can say networking is the most important. I reached out to as many people as possible in specialty and asked them different questions about their own personal statements, their own personal experiences, things that I should do, things I should not do, and all of that stuff. And that was helpful.
Okay. Just to follow up before I allow Dr. Chinere give her own input, in terms of reaching out, sometimes, I mean, I do my best, but I think sometimes maybe people feel like they might be bothering, not bothering, but they don't want to be an inconvenience to anyone, especially you guys being residents and having a busy schedule. Is that something anybody should even worry about, or like, or just feel free, reach out to people, and if people are able to help, they will help. If they can't, they can't.
I think you shouldn't worry about that. Helping is an individual thing. If you're willing to help someone, you're willing to help someone. If you don't want to help, you're not going to help.
Yeah,
Residency, busy schedule, and all. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So maybe, yes, it will take a little bit longer for some of us to get back to you because our schedules are super busy. But I personally will get back to you. It may just take me a little bit longer. And I will honestly apologize for it because I understand that, these are time sensitive things. But
Yeah.
I think it's on the individual person to help you. So reach out. If they don't help, reach out to the next person. You know,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, everybody's just trying to be successfully matched into residency. So, I mean, the onus is on you to keep reaching out until you get the answers and things that you need.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Can
Thank
I,
you.
can I chip in something to just add to?
Can I ask a question?
Okay, let Dr. Julia chip in and then please ask your question.
Okay.
Thank you. In terms of like reaching out to people, like these are people you've never met and they don't really know you.
Yeah.
And it's like you're getting in their space. I agree with Dr. Bianju. You still have to reach out, but let your first statement, like in the text or in the email, be, "Hey, I'm sorry for getting into your space, or sorry for bothering you. I know you're very busy," but then you say what you want to say. Always say that all the time. That's kind of that statement would kind of like cool their mind a little bit. And I mean, who wants to respond will respond anyway, but just always start the statement with something calming to like win their hearts or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand.
That's what I did, and it worked for me. And like I'll just like say something like that, and most people will respond. Some, like Dr. Bianju said, we come and like, "Oh, I'm sorry for replying late," but they will still respond even if it takes 3 months. Some people go back to me after like 3, 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can also send a reminder, like just to remind them after about 2 months of the first message.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just gentle and calm about it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Julia. All right. So whoever wanted to ask a question, you can go ahead and ask the question, and I'll let Dr. Chinyere please give a response to that question. So someone had a question?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Eddie. I'm applying this year, and first of all, I want to thank the leadership of Kainji for organizing this forum. I'm just joining. I don't know if someone has asked this question before, but if they do, perhaps maybe I'll get an answer to it. So, concerning statement of purpose, I've been trying to construct mine. I've also sent out to Kainji also. But I've also been reading a lot of templates online to compare what I'm writing and what other people have written. And I noticed that these residency programs, they have over 5,000 or 10,000 applicants. Everybody is sending in templates. My first question is, do they actually read these 10,000 letters? If they do, are they looking for something specific, let's say a phrase, a statement, or an idea, or are they using like a computer to filter off these 10,000 letters? The third question is, at what point does this statement matter? Does it help you to get interview, or it helps you to let them know that you are more interested after you must have gotten the interview? That's the third question. And the last question is, I just figure myself reading maybe 500 letters. Almost all of them are going to sound persuasive. Do they go by their emotion, or is just sheer luck? Or they use a scientific way of saying this is a good letter and this is not a good letter? Because if I read a letter in the morning and I read 300 letters after in the afternoon, I may have forgotten the one I read in the morning, and I'll just go with my gut. So I don't know if these questions have been asked before or if they are necessary, but it's been always has bothered me for a while.
So no, it hasn't been. Sorry. Were you finished? I apologize.
He's
Yeah, I'm done.
done.
Okay, so this is Dr. Beniju here. So, I mean, every residency program, as far as I heard, or at least questions when I asked previous residents when I was applying, they'll all function kind of differently. But usually, I mean, they have a lot of applications. So the idea is that, there's a board of a couple of doctors plus a chief resident usually, and they just divvy up the different applications and things like that. So like certain people, like, like one person isn't going to read 500 or whatever. Maybe like they will take it in stacks of piles and stuff like that, and they'll divvy it up. Obviously, one very easy way to rule you out is score wise, depending on what kind of program it is. If they really care about a certain score, they have a certain score cutoff. So that is somehow how they weed out some applications already right from the get go. They may never download those applications. They they go through a computer system and they go through the score cutoffs that they want, and they remove anybody who doesn't have those scores. So easily already, they've probably removed like a good amount of applications before they download whichever ones they have decided that they're going to go through and read. Now, some programs say that, they do a more holistic approach, so they will read through everything. I don't know how true that is because I've never really sat on a board and I haven't really gotten a chance to speak to, I've spoken to a few people who sat on a board, but like I said, it's individualistic to the program. So the ones that are more holistic, as far as I know, will read through the entire thing, personal statement, all the extra stuff you have in there at all. The ones that are not really holistic, maybe they have other criteria in which if they filter through and see something else that's not in accordance with them, they get rid of that, and then they may never read like the rest of your applications. And when they get it down to whoever they really want to call for interview, then they will go ahead and read through the entirety of that application and things like that. So I mean, it works very differently. But at the very end of the day, really, it comes both ways. Like, it can be a little biased in that whoever is reading your personal statement, if something about that stands out to them, then they are putting you in for an interview. If you also happen to know people at the program who can advocate on your behalf, that's always helpful as well, because I hear that, people come in and they're like, oh, this is a person that I, is a candidate of mine and blah, blah, blah. I'd like to present them for an interview or whatever. I'm not going to lie on here. I definitely used some connections to get a few of the ones that I got. So that's another way so that that your application will pass the entire chopping block or whatever. Other than that, honestly, like, it's very dependent, you know what I mean? Who reads it, if anything about your personal statements does, resonate with them, stands out with them and things like that. But I wouldn't, get your head too bogged down by the fact, like, whether or not they're going to read it, whether or not they're not, things like that. It's really, it's hard to kind of determine, like, all of those things. I would just focus on writing the very best unique story. There's no way of knowing if you're, it's unfortunate. A lot of us go through medical school and things like that, and we all have the same shared experiences. Unfortunately, you can't tell, okay, maybe 50,000 people have the same thing I do. Just write the very best statement you can. And the truth is, whoever wants to work with you is going to work with you anyway. And trust me, you want to be at a program where they actually want to work with you and they care about you and things like that. Nobody wants to go into a program that's going to feel like they're very left out and things like that. So just write the best thing you can and, like, pray, whatever you do, hope for the best.
Thank you so much, Dr. Obianuju. Dr. Chinyere, we haven't heard from you since you joined us. Dr. Chinyere is also a pediatric resident, so I want her to please comment on the last question, or to just give her own insight into anything she has to say about the personal statement.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. My name is Chinyere. Just started residency last month, so I'm kind of still new to it. But from my experience writing personal statements, I had a statement from when I applied for master's, so that was like a starting point for me, having something to work with. But this was different. This was for residency, so I had to make some changes to it. So what I did was to start writing down thoughts as they came to my mind. So write down any meeting I attend, or if I listen to people, or if I read something, I just write down the thoughts before I kind of put everything together into what looked like a good statement. But like Obianuju said earlier, I also wanted to become a pediatrician as a young child. So I kind of told that story from the beginning, that this was how I got into wanting to be a doctor and then wanting to be a pediatrician. And talking about characteristics that they want in a pediatrician, I talked about how the pediatricians I met as a child kind of calmed me down, because I hated going to the hospital and getting injections. And that was a phobia I had anytime I wanted to go to the hospital. But knowing that I was going to meet some kind doctor that was going to talk to me and make me feel good and talk about school and all those things that helped to remove my mind from the injection I was going to get, kind of made it easier for me. So I admired them and wanted to be like them. So that was maybe the characteristic that I talked about. Okay. And then I just kind of put all those thoughts together, and also like progression from a child, then through med school, and then my experience with the few things I did in Nigeria before I went to do a master's. So it's also like a story, just telling my story, how it happened and how I got to the point where I was applying for residency. So I think that I also read a lot of personal statements, and I felt that was what most of them were also trying to do. Then I kind of also got a lot of friends involved. I sent my personal statements to a lot of people, doctors, non-doctors. I just wanted to get their inputs, even people that are just correct as much as just the English. Like, yes, you write something and you think is so great, and then someone tells you, oh, you should have put it this way makes it better. Putting it this way kind of is more concise and brings out the points you want. So I just sent it to a number of people to just help me read it and make their corrections. And then when they had all done that, I put all the things, the corrections they had made together into what I felt was a good statement. And somehow I think it was, because a lot of people that interviewed me actually talked about some of the things I wrote there. So yes, to one of the questions the last person asked, some of them do read those personal statements. They may not read it at the time when they are picking people to interview, but by the time they pick you for an interview, some of them actually sit down and read your personal statement. I had a number of funny experiences with people that stay like asking me almost everything in my personal statement and CV. So yes, some of them read it, some do not, because they may not have the time. They just print it out that morning, and then when you come in there, they start asking you afresh, like the things there, so you know maybe they didn't read it. But it's always good to put in your best when you're writing it, because you don't know who will read it and who will be fascinated about your story and want to know more about it. So I don't know whether I answered some of the questions or
Yes,
just my bit.
you did. You did. Thank you so much, Dr. Chinere. We appreciate your input. I just want to mention the person who was asking who wants to be connected to a neurology resident, please send me a PM, a message on Telegram. And I'm Loretta Aquala. So send me a message on Telegram so I can connect you. Okay, so I have a follow-up question. So I know that, yes, while it's all well and dandy to score 250s, 240s, 260s, it's not the case for everybody. People are in different situations. Some cases might be maybe there's been an attempt on an exam, be it either step 1, step 2, or step 3, or step 2 CS, either one exam or more, or maybe even it's low scores. Maybe it's like a score maybe under 210, or a score in the 200s. So let me leave it to that: attempts and low scores. In that scenario, and I would like to hear from Dr. Sheon first, since he has to leave soon, just to get his input before he leaves. Should one address such things in the personal statement, or leave it be? And if one should address it, what is a tactful way to go about it, whereby you're not focusing on your on that aspect, on the negative aspect, but instead you are saying what happened, but at the same time showing how you've progressed from that setback. So Dr. Shewa, I don't know if you can give us some insight into that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think most people believe that if you have an attempt, it's best to explain it in your personal statement. And I think as a matter of fact, that makes a lot of sense, because definitely they are going to see that, you have an attempt. So you're going to see your USMLE transcript. And then some of them they might still be interested in your application irrespective of that. And so if you can find a way in your personal statement to put an explanation into, maybe why you had the attempt or what you have learned from that attempt, I think that is a good idea. And then for someone like me, so I did have an attempt. So I had so I didn't pass step 2 CS at first.
Okay.
So what's it called? So I passed at the second attempt.
Okay.
And so it was really very important for me to put it in my personal statement, because one of the things about me is that I have a I have an hearing impairment, and
Oh,
so that really played a role in my failing step 2 CS at the first attempt. And since that was also part of my story for my personal statement, I had to put it there that I've had these hearing impairments when I was growing up, but then I never had to use hearing aid until I came to the United States for my PhD studies. And so the fact that I had an attempt, I'm putting it in my personal statement. If I look at the success I had with my application, I think it really, I think, yeah, it was good that it was in my personal statement. So I don't know whether I have answered the question, but then I think if you have anything or like some suboptimal performances that you think you need to explain, then it's good for you to put it in a personal statement.
thank you so much, Dr. Shell. Actually, that's a very, very nice example of how to address, you know, the setback, the reason why it happened, and the fact that you were resilient, you moved on, and you passed it at the second try. Yeah, but I guess what for somebody, for example, who doesn't have a hearing impairment, and life just happened, either they didn't pass, they have had an attempt. Um, I want to hear from Dr. Victoria if she can give us an input on whether she feels that should be addressed in the personal statement, and if she feels it should be addressed in the personal statement, how should one go about it? And that also includes suboptimal step scores as well. Dr. Victoria, are you here? Okay. All right. We'll just I'll let Dr. Sean maybe give us an insight if you can. Oh, oh, Dr. Victoria, we can't hear you.
Hello.
This is Agnes. I could chip in a little bit from what I have gotten so far. I'm also applying, but I had an attempt and I had a lot of questions about it before, and I could also chip in some of the inputs I've gotten so far, both from Kainji and other people I talked to about the attempt.
Okay, go ahead, and then we'll hear from the residents. Agnes, please go ahead.
So what I gathered is, because I also have an attempt in CS, and this is gonna be my third time applying. I was told that yes, I should mention it. They already see it, they know it. They want to see how you address it. Everyone falls, everyone makes mistakes. The more important thing to them is how do you rise up from it? Are you making excuses? If you make excuses, that is wrong. If you say, oh, I didn't have enough time to study or this and that, no, that is a wrong way to go. That's a wrong way to go about it. The best way to go about it is accept it. Yes, I did fail this because you make a very genuine, there is a reason. It's not because you didn't study. Something may have happened. Something tragic may have happened in your life. Not that that should be an excuse, but you should say at least one sentence about it. For me, I didn't really have any excuse. I just said, okay, I had studied, but I guess I didn't, coming from a different way, like coming from Nigeria, schooling from Nigeria, this was my first time, being in that kind of exam scenario. So it was kind of new to me. And the problem I had was with my typing, that I wasn't very good in my typing, and that really affected me. And that since then, I did this, did that, and I even started tutoring people for CS. And when I went back, I did well, and that was it. Just one sentence, close it up. It will still come up again if they invite you for interview. They will ask you the question again. You just have to be direct, accept it, rise out of it, show how you came out of it and how you succeeded, because you definitely did do well and pass it, either by the second or the third time or however times it took you to pass. But you have to show how you fell and how you rose from that fall.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Agnes. Go ahead, Dr. Sean.
Okay. So yeah, so I think that for something like this, definitely, there will always be two two sides to the coin. So it's dicey. But then you want to also know that these people they have the information, so they are going to see it anyway. And for mentioning it, the advantage is that if this is a program that tries to look at the applicant holistically, they might still want to know from the personal statement, like what kind of candidate is this person? Why did they have this attempt? Did they really mention it? Are they trying to, you know, um, hide it from us? Things like that. And then for me, I use my example because when I had my attempt, I thought that that was like a big blow to my application. But then, yeah, I interviewed at many of the best programs in pathology, and I don't think that the attempt really, I would not have thought that with the attempt I had in step 2 CS that maybe I would have been interviewed in those programs. And there are even like programs that I never knew anybody had. I was not really expecting them to interview me, but then they interviewed me. So my own opinion is that good to mention it. Yeah, but just be very careful the way you mention it. Let's see. You have to be very clever, and then let it not look like you are making an excuse, like someone said. Let it be that okay, maybe you have learned a lesson from that. And I've also read personal statements because as residents, so we get to have interview dinners with applicants, and so they send us their application. So I've read a number of personal statements, and I've seen people, mention the fact that they had this attend or maybe they failed a course in medical school, and I think for them to still be interviewed, it means that the fact that they mention it, is not really being a disadvantage to them. So that's my own opinion.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Sheldon. That's actually very helpful and insightful. I know you have to leave us soon, so I just in case you sign off while the meeting is ongoing. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you for all the wonderful suggestions you've given us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Um, so another question I want to ask, there's another cohort we have within Kainji that is applying this year. These are, older medical graduates. And when I say older, please, I say it very respectfully. I am referring to people maybe who have graduated 5 or more years ago from medical school. So one of the concerns some people who fit into that cohort have, especially when you're talking about 8, 9, 10 years out, is difficulty getting interviews. Even if they get interviews, difficulty matching. While I know there are other things they can do outside of the personal statements, that doesn't guarantee anything 100%, but hopefully will add value to the application as a whole. In the personal statement, what can that person focus on so that when somebody reads through the personal statement, hopefully after going through all the filters, the person is like, okay, even though this person has graduated a long time from medical school, I want to interview them, and maybe even most likely I want them at my program. Dr. Victoria, if you can give some insight into this, what can a medical graduate who has graduated 5 or more years ago, even more importantly, we're talking now 8, 9, 10 years, how can they beef up their personal statement so that it gives them an advantage in whatever way possible? Yeah, that's my question. Dr. Victoria, are you there? I think we still cannot hear you. Okay. All right. While Dr. Victoria comes on, I'm going to ask.
Can I
Oh,
say something?
yes, please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Chinyere. I already talked about myself a bit. I'm actually this is my 10th year post-graduation. So I fit into that picture last year because that was 9 years post-graduation. But it's just to tell everyone in that position that don't let anybody tell you it's not possible or that you can't get what you want. I matched into a university program, and I know at the time I was applying, it felt like you can't get into a university program with that number of years out and all that. But maybe from my experience, what I would say is, first of all, if you're already in the US, I would say if you can get close to programs close to where you live. That's what happened to me. There's a program that is about 30 minutes out from where I stay, and I got to meet them and I talked with them. And even before the interview season, I spoke with a number of the faculty members there, and they asked me to start coming for their morning review. Of course, my year of graduation was off for them, and they usually don't even take IMGs, not to talk of people that out how many years out. But it's just you showing that commitment that you actually like this program. It's close to you. You can use family as an example, like, oh, it's close to my family. I would love to be here. I remember it was one of the Kainji meetings that made me think of that. They said, maybe send a mail to the chief resident or send a mail to the program director and introduce yourself and say, oh, I live in this area. I know about this program. I'm a medical doctor. I would want to know, maybe meet up, talk, or if I can just ask questions about the program and how I can get in if, during the interview season or something like that, just to make them know you exist and that you have the interest in the program and make them know you. And then another thing is, one of the faculty members told me that most times when they start matching or when they start picking people they want in their program, sometimes they also consider, if we pick this person, will the person really pick us? So you live in California, you're applying, and your family is in California with you. You're applying to a program in Atlanta, or let's say Chicago is a very cold place, and they're just asking, this person is in California, the family is in California. Yes, you're a good fit, but if we pick you, are you going to also pick us, or would you prefer programs closer to California? So she was, honest with me that most times they also look at that because most of the programs want to brag about, oh, we got the first 10 people that we, ranked high. So they want to be sure that if they are ranking you high, you're also going to rank them high. And they look at some of the things, not just your application as a whole, but they also look at, okay, some other things like, will this person be willing to come here? Will this person cope with the system here? So if they know you're close by, you have family there, you have support, and they see you maybe get interested in their program before you even match, then they will think, oh, this person, we can give this person a chance to see if, they'll fit into the program. So I know it's always tough. Like, I had a lot of things against me. I didn't get the letters of recommendation from the US. The only US letter I had was from my classmate that just finished residency a month before that. So yes, some people, you read a lot of things online and they tell you, oh, it's not possible. You can't do this US clinical experience, all that. If you can't get all those things, please get them. but don't let that be the yardstick that will determine whether you get a good program or not. Sell yourself. If you have experience, talk about your experience. They haven't worked in Africa before, so they don't know what it feels like to work there. So if you've worked in Nigeria, you have experience, talk about it. It's something that they have not experienced. So when you talk about it, talk about it with passion. I did this. I worked in a HIV clinic, and most times if they ask me, oh, teamwork, I just go back to my experience working in the HIV clinic. I'm like, I was in charge of the HIV clinic. Yes, I was a medical officer there. I had HODs above me, but I was the medical officer in charge of the clinic, and I worked with nurses. So I'll just talk about it like, oh, teamwork. That was how I got the experience, working with nurses, health workers, and all that, trying to coordinate care of HIV patients. It's my experience. I talk about it. They don't experience it. They've not even seen that number of HIV patients before. So it's just you trying to tell your story in such a way that most of them sit back and like one of the program directors told me, you should write a book about your experience.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's something they cannot imagine it. So when you talk about working in a clinic where you're seeing 50 to 100 people a day, it's something they can't experience. But if you talk about your US clinical experience, they know the limitations. They know that is an externship. There's a limit because there are laws that prevent you from doing certain things. So even if you exaggerate some of the things you do, or some of the doctors may allow you do certain things, but they also know there are limitations to what you can do. So that's why some programs will say externships and observerships, they don't consider them clinical experience because they know the limitations to it. But if you're coming from outside and you're saying, I've worked as a surgeon in Nigeria, I've worked as a medical officer, I've worked at, they can't explain, or you are the one that will tell your story because they don't understand the extent, and they know you're working with limited resources. So when you tell them you did surgeries, like 3, 4, 5 surgeries without this, they can somehow understand what you're saying because they know it's a low resource area, something like that. So when you tell your story, you can captivate someone and make them sit down and listen to you. So don't think the number of years is a disadvantage. Yes, it may be to some programs, but the way you tell your story will make them kind of want to listen to you. Maybe 1 or 2 may listen, but in the end, you get what you want.
Thank you so much. This actually, I really liked your perspective on things just because it is different. It's not usual. Researching programs, I see a lot of you need US clinical experience as a criteria. And while that doesn't affect me based on my educational pathway, there are other people that it might discourage them from applying because they feel, oh, I don't have this much US clinical experience or I don't have this much hands-on experience. So I'm very happy that you gave the examples that you gave and how people can use the experiences that they have, be it in Nigeria or wherever else that those experiences came from, and use it to their advantage, put that in their personal statement along with other things to make it work in their favor. I really do appreciate that, Chinyere. Thank you very much. So Dr. Victor, and again, guys, especially for the attendees, the residents are really giving us a lot of very, very helpful information in the chat box. I will do my best to copy this in a Word document so we can make the transcript available even after the meeting, but feel free to check out the chat box to see all of the comments the residents are leaving in there. So I'm going to ask actually um, Dr. Julia to give us her own insights on, for somebody who is a older medical graduate, how they can, I mean, a lot of the residents have given us very, very useful information, but if she has anything to add to that, Dr. Julia, can you please let us know?
Um, I kind of agree with everything they've said so far, and I think that, I mean, some people will say that is a red flag if you're old graduates. Plus, the program want people that are fresh, but it's also very important to remind them the program that the fact that you are an old graduate doesn't mean you've been out of training. You can, like, if you, like, for example, if you had a master's or you were working in a hospital, so you were practicing basically. You've not been out of school. What you want to prove to them or explain to them is that you're even though you may be the oldest in the class, you're still trainable. You've worked with people that are older than you. You know, like you're able to work with everybody regardless of the age, you know. Um, yeah, I don't think, to be honest, like if they want to take you, they like you, they see your scores and everything. The number of years of graduation doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It's just I mean, everybody I know they always say, okay, so where this comes in is when they are featuring for programs. Because I remember one of the programs that I called and they happened to pick up. They were like, oh, we didn't see your application because we have a 5-year mark on how, they're going to filter you out for sure. But you have to look for other ways to let them see you. Maybe emailing them, or calling people. This is where connecting and networking comes in. The program will not just pull up your application because they won't see it. It's going to be thrown out. They have thousands and thousands. So call people, call the program director or program coordinator, email them, let them know that, oh, even though your application was filtered out, they should pull it up and review it. And when they review it, that's where they actually see what you actually have to offer, So
Okay.
yeah, the fact that you're an old graduate doesn't mean you can't match, or there are no options. There are no like you don't have opportunity to get in as well. Yeah, so just keep that in mind.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you to all the residents. You guys have just been so awesome today. All the past residents have been awesome, but you guys, I'm so grateful for how much information you are giving, and even in the chat box, all of the comments you are leaving. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wanted to follow up on what you said, Dr. Julia. You said you called the program and because apparently they had filtered out your application. Sometimes I'm one of those people, I'm like, when they say, oh, don't do something, I stick to it. I'm like, they said we should not do it, so I'm not going to do it. So I don't know, when you're calling a program, especially during that time of the interview season, what do you say to them so that it's not off-putting, but at the same time they're interested in, hearing you out, and to the point where hopefully they dig out your application and want to review it? Because yeah, how do you phrase it? Because I don't know if just saying, oh, my name is Loretta Akpala, if I graduated, let's say, 10 years ago from medical school, I know you have a cutoff for 5 years and below, but I'm really interested in your program and I would really love the opportunity to interview with you. Is that what you say, or do you say something more? What exactly do you put in your email, or what do you say during the phone call to get your point across? Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing that you just said, but you have to I mean, you don't have to say the cutoff like 5,000 or something, but
Mm.
you just tell them that you really interested in the program and you kind of live close, you have family members around, and this is like your base, like this is a place that you'd love to train and why. And if they don't mind pulling up your application to review it, you will really appreciate that. I remember during our application time last time that we had the same meeting, there was a resident, Kenny, that came on and said he even went as far as going to programs in person. Um, like go walk to the program coordinator and like tell them, hey, I applied here. So when you're doing all this, for me, my own advice would be like, don't go in September. Don't go in. Just wait till when medical US grads start canceling. That's when I started calling because let's say they invited 10 people for an interview and 3 people already called to cancel. And
Mm-hmm.
you just happen to call. That's what happened to me. I just happened to call that day before the interview, and like 3 people already canceled, and they had spots to just put me in there. And she was like, "Oh, why not? Like, we have people canceled. It was in January,
Mm.
things like that. So you can like don't give up, even if it's January, call, visit program, email, you know, people are canceling at that time. In September, nobody's going to cancel. They want to go for all the interview they want to
Yeah.
get. November, everybody's going. But when it gets to December, January, they're tired of traveling, they're canceling interviews. Instead of having 10 people come, they're going to have 5. I mean, why not ship you in there, especially if they review your application? And yeah, so this is another reason why I was going to talk about putting red flag in your personal statement. I mean, I won't say I don't agree with the other speakers. Like, there are two opinions each time, but for me personally, I'm not going to put any red flag on my personal statement or any red flag on my application because they're going to pull it up. Maybe they filter you already and you have all those red flags just glaring at them. You know, like I failed something or I'm like old graduates. No, I'm going to sell myself on my personal statement. And when I get to that interview, if they happen to ask me in person, because they can see it by themselves, why do I have to bring it up? If they ask me, then I'll tell them the truth and explain myself. But like, I'm not going to write on my personal statement that I failed and this is the reason why, you know.
Yeah.
That's just my own personal opinion, you know, but yeah, basically that's it. So in general, like I advise that you call, reach out to people, even residents. Like if you meet up on people on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on residents that you know, talk to them. And the time you should really talk to them is when they are counseling. People are counseling. Let them talk to their program director. Let them walk up to their program coordinator. They can push you in if people cancel. You know, don't give up. Don't say it's January. I'm not gonna get interview anymore. You know, it's February. I even got an interview in February, February 3rd, and it was very close to the ranking. Keep talking, like keep asking people. It's not over until the match is done, you know. Yeah. So yeah, that's just what I have to say about this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Julia. Thank you, everybody, every resident that is here. Thank you so much. I know I've heard from someone, the person said until the very last minute, you are working in terms of trying to make sure you match. So I'm very, very grateful for all of this insight and unique perspective that everybody has been sharing. Um, I have a follow-up question. Oh, let me give the floor to those who are here that are attending the meeting. Does anybody have a question? Please go ahead and ask. Hi guys, please feel free to ask all of your questions because the residents are very helpful and they are really the best people to give you the answers you need.
Okay. Uh, good morning, everybody. My name is Kainji. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. So I really want to appreciate you, residents, for trying to help us. The only thing I just want to ask is if I have my personal statement, I have some of your emails on the chat page. Is it okay to email you if you can like go through my personal statement or my CV and like have a comment, one comment or two?
Feel free.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Let me. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and you guys go ahead and check the chat box. The residents have left their phone numbers and even email addresses. If anybody has questions on how to contact anybody, please send me a message on Telegram. I'm Loretta Pala, and I'll do my best to facilitate a connection. So, somebody has a question here. The person is asking what are the residents' thoughts on gaps? And I'm going to ask Dr. Obianuju, because she already read his prompt, to please go ahead and give us an insight on this and how to address it in the personal statement. Yes, sir.
So for me, I had one gap year in between finishing medical school and applying to residency. I know that obviously some people here, like we're talking about, people who graduated 8-9 years ago, so that's not as long, right? So some of us were answering that question in the chat box, it's, when you have gap years, as far as I've talked to everyone that I've talked to in the medical field while I was applying, it's very important to find something to do with that gap year that is related to medicine. Now, I know it can be challenging, to find who, like, things. For me personally, like, I was applying to pediatrics, but I could not find any pediatrician who was willing to work with me. To do something in the long term. I couldn't even find anyone who was willing to work with me for the short term. So, and honestly, I could not find anything in the US, but my family is resides in Canada now. So what I did was I went home. I kept applying to things in the US, but they said I needed US papers, something like, I didn't have any kind of status in the US at the time. So that did not work out. Everything I reached out to replied me with the same thing. So I was very frustrated. I applied for research positions in anything, like any field whatsoever. It didn't even matter if it was pediatrics or not. In Canada, I couldn't get anything. So luckily for me, there was a family member who is a family physician that was looking for, someone to kind of be like a clinician, like an assistant for her, like, and I was willing to do it. Like, I ended up getting paid for the job, right? That was lucky, but I was willing to do it for free just to have something to do. I was going there like maybe 2-3 times a week, to just work with her and see patients, like just to have something in there, to say that I had, did something clinical. And I said to myself, okay, maybe the other days I was off, I would find something to do as a job to sustain myself or blah, 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 whatever. But that's beside the point. So I worked with a family medicine physician for my entire year, leading up until match applications and everything that year, that I was off of medical school. That's what I did. And the way I sold it in my interviews and even in my, like, putting in an ERAS was that, even though I was working for her and she was a family physician, I was allowed to see, I was the one mainly in charge of seeing all the pediatric patients. I saw all the patients, I did all their HMPs. So basically, I was functioning at the level of a resident, writing notes, doing all the things. And that's how I sold it. I said to them, I'm like, I've been in this family clinic and all the pediatric patients, I see them, I do their immunizations, I do their shots, I do everything, like the charting, everything. So that really impressed a couple of the people I interviewed with that, oh, okay, well, she's already kind of doing exactly what we expect her to be doing here. So my thing to you is find anything. Just it's nice if it's in the field in which you want, but if it's not, find anything and find a way to spin it and make it work for you. That's my thing on gap years. Do not just sit there and have gap years and then just like be like, okay, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Even if you're working like a retirement home or something like that, and you say, what, I've seen elderly patients, managing their whatever. Like any way in which you spin it to positively work for you is much better than having 8-9 years or 10 years or something like that where you haven't really done anything attached to medicine. And then you're just like kind of like they're like, okay, well, what do we do with this person or whatever, stuff like that. Have them questioning your ability to do clinical stuff and things like that. That's my thoughts on it.
Thank you very much. That actually was very helpful. As there was a follow-up question. The person wrote, yeah, found something in the last 3 months. Is that quite enough? I would say so, but I'll let Dr. Obianuju just take this one to the very end. Yeah.
I think for the last 3 months, it's 3 months is quite a bit of time in my opinion. I know, like, I mean, it's not a year's duration or whatever, things like that, but at least it's something. That's a start. By the time they maybe interview you, this could end up being like what a 5 month or 6 month experience. You have a lot to say about it. That is what is most important. What are you doing there? How are you effectively making some kind of clinical change, like clinical? How are you adding to the clinical community, or what are you doing clinical wise that's keeping you in tune with what medicine is at this moment? That's what's most important. So I think 3 months is a good time, enough of time for you to say something about what you've been doing. And that's all that's required, honestly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Obianuju. And thank you to all the residents again, for all of this wonderful information that you're blessing us with and for all the comments in the chat box. Thank you. So I'm going to give the floor for another Kainji member who's applying this year to please ask a question. So does anybody have a question? Please go ahead and ask. Guys, please ask questions. Does anybody have a question? I see something in the chat box here. Okay. So the person here, this is for neurology, so I guess this is going to be directed at Dr. Julia. So the Kainji member is asking that they would really love to apply they really love to apply to a neurology specialty, but they don't have a neurology LOR. So the candidate is asking, must one have at least one LOR from a from a neurology faculty member? And also, do you have to do observership or externship in neurology as well? So Dr. Julia, please, can you give us your some insights into that question?
Oh yeah. So I mean, in general, they advise us like if you're applying to any specialty at all, you should have at least one letter of recommendation from that specialty. And that being said, like for me, I couldn't find a neurologist in the United States to like give me a letter of recommendation. So I went back home to my home school, and basically it happens that at that time our neurologist that we had there was like a big person, so I just like took his letter. I mean, I asked him to write me a letter, and I even suggested that I write it so that way he knows how they want it here in the United States. So I wrote it when he signed it and everything, uploaded it for me to ERAS. But that was the only neurology letter I have. My other letters was from the United States, from a family medicine doctor and internal medicine doctor, but because I was also applying, but they wrote two letters for me. One was a family medicine letter and the other was a general letter. They didn't put any specialty. So those were the two letters that I used. And also I wrote in my personal statement, I wrote on my personal statement that my mentor, the neurologist from Nigeria that wrote me a letter was my mentor. That's why I've always wanted to be in neurology for medical school. So everything kind of tied together. So if you can't, and it's really hard to get a letter of recommendation because most of the neurologists are not Nigerians. They're white people, few Nigerians. And then if you can't get from here, go back home and get your neurology letter of recommendation or any specialty that you can't get letter. Go back to your school and get from your professor or somebody.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Julia, for that comment. I hope that helped. Jolly, I think that's the member's name. And Dr. Julia, the member would like to connect with you. She left her details in the chat box. So I think, yeah, you can send her a message and all whatnot, and she'll connect with you that way. Okay, so does anybody else have any more questions? Okay. So someone is asking, what's the average length of a personal statement? I think there's a certain number of words that your personal statement in ERAS should be. I think about a page long of a Word document. Yeah. Dr. Victoria says not more than 1 page on ERAS. Yeah. I believe that's accurate. Yeah, so somebody asked, is there a pediatric resident you can connect with? Yeah, Dr. Obianuju just answered. She's a pediatric resident. Dr. Chinyere is also a pediatric resident, and they've left their information in the chat box as well. So you guys can connect with them that way. Yeah. Okay, so I have a question. When you're writing your personal statement, usually, especially the end of the personal statement, when you're trying to, I guess now say, bring everything to a close, a lot of the time is people will say, oh, I think I'll be a good fit for this group program, maybe because I'm hardworking, this and that. My question is, what is a unique way to close your personal statement? But at this point, you are pretty much at least summarizing who you are as a candidate, in a way that is different and eye-catching. What approach did you guys take? And I'm going to let Dr. Dope please give us a response to this question. How did you conclude your personal statement? And I'm not going to say it's generic, but it's quite common in terms of people saying, oh, I'm hardworking and this and that, and I blah, 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 I would love to be in your program. But what's a different way to say that and still catch the eye of whoever is reading that personal statement?
Okay. For me, I can't remember using that as my conclusion. My conclusion was where I see myself in the future. So since I applied for pathology, my conclusion was I used my whole genotype thing. I said I see myself as a future hematopathologist contributing to like sickle cell disease and blah blah blah. So that was my conclusion. I didn't talk about good fit. The good fit hardworking was like in second semi last paragraph. But the last paragraph was where I see myself in the future and how I would help contribute to the society. That was how I concluded mine. So I don't know. I think it differs for people.
People.
But the whole hard working blah 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 was not my conclusion. I put it in the middle of the personal statement.
Okay. Dr. Chinere, can you tell us how you concluded your personal statement? Like, or at least when you were getting towards the end of your personal statement, what was the information you were including in maybe the second to the last paragraph of your personal statement, as well as the last paragraph of your personal statement? What were you trying to convey in that section?
Um, okay, for the second to the last, but okay, first of all, my personal statement was more than one page. It was, I think, one quarter
Okay.
page, so it didn't fit into the one page thing. And then towards I talked about my experience, and then I think someone mentioned the transition. So because I had not done like clinical work in a few years, masters and then moving to the US, I had to explain that change, getting back to clinical work. So that was the portion where I said, okay, I've been in the US, I've seen the health system, and I just talked a little bit about why I was trying to get back into clinical care practice. And then the last paragraph, I just talked about myself a bit, fun-loving, adventurous, love meeting new people. And I felt that was my way of saying I could fit into a program,
Yeah.
diversity and all that. I had experienced it. I had lived in two different countries and able to adapt and all that. So it was just saying, okay, this is me trying to, I can adapt in whatever place I see myself. And then I just talked a little, I think the last two lines was sentences was like, this is what I want to be in the future. I think I said I wanted to do general peds,
Mm-hmm.
and but that's, I really want to be that doctor that will make a difference for the next. So I just used the quote or something, just something like, I want to be that doctor that will make a difference for the next child I meet, something like that. So it was more like I started talking about a doctor making a difference in my life and wanting to be that doctor that will make a difference in the child. So the first paragraph was talking about doctors that made a difference in my life as a child. And I used the last paragraph to say I wanted to be that doctor that will make a difference for the next child. So, however, it depends on your writing skills and how
Mm-hmm.
you spin things around. Yes, but that was how I ended my personal statement.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Dr. Obianuju also commented, she said, close your personal statement by the last paragraph being a summary of all you have spoken about, and then talk about looking forward to growing and learning in residency or something like that. That makes sense. And Dr. Victoria also mentioned as a resident, and that she said, first of all, there are three things all personal statements, in her opinion, should have, which is your why, your how, and what you have to offer. And then she gave an example that you can include as a resident. I hope to dedicate my time, knowledge, and energy to providing the best care for my patients in an environment that provides guided independence and fosters productivity. I want a program that allows me to pursue my passion for clinical medicine, education, global health, and research. Although this journey will be challenging, I believe I am well equipped with the right people, hard work, honesty, and commitment needed to provide care to each patient in my highest capacity. And she said that was her last paragraph. So, the residents, thank you again for giving us this wonderful, transparent examples. It really does help to spark one's imagination of how we can make our own original personal statements work to our advantage. Um, So Emeka has a question in the chat box, and he says, my question is kind of away from what's being discussed. That he would like to know, can someone kindly explain just briefly what transitional or preliminary years mean and how to go about applying for those? Pros and cons maybe. I am looking to apply to an occupational medicine program, and most of the programs require you to have done either a preliminary year or transitional year somewhere else. I don't know, can any resident at all give us some insight into this?
I can answer that one.
Okay,
That's
please
okay.
go ahead. Yes, please
I'm
go
not
ahead.
doing, my program doesn't require a preliminary year, but basically a preliminary or transitional year, a lot of, more advanced programs like anesthesiology, neurology, um, PM&R, those times, they require you to do a transitional year before starting your second year in that advanced program. So basically, transitional year is just like a 1 year. And then sometimes people also just do it because sometimes they're undecided about what they want to go into. So they're doing something in the meantime, to be able to at least have a job, be able to take care of stuff while like making a final decision on what it is that they do eventually want to do. So it's basically just like a 1 year contract. You're not in a categorical program like the rest of us where it's like 3 years, 5 years for surgery and things like that. And you'll be working for that 1 year. And then basically during the transitional year, I've heard like, every program models it differently, but generally you kind of basically in that transitional year, you go through like working through different like, fields. Like you might do like maybe like a month in internal, a month in peds, a month in things like that, kind of give you like a view of what all the fields look like working in them and stuff like that. And you kind of make like a, I guess like your decision then if you're like maybe looking into making a decision and you're not sure, you know, but then preliminary years, usually they're like internal medicine or they're surgery. So you'd be doing a preliminary year in medicine. So you'd be like functionally, basically like a first year medical resident, or you'd be functioning like a first year surgery, kind of like a first year surgery resident, and you'll be doing, all the different procedures and things like that. But like I said before, it's only a 1 year contract. So after that 1 year is up, you should have a next program ready to go. If you don't have a next program ready to go, then you're basically out of a job at this point. So I guess I would say that that's like the downside of it in the sense that, if you don't end up matching into something after that, then you're basically out of a job after that. I have seen some people go ahead and do a second preliminary year, wait again before they apply and match into something. So I guess it's up to you on what your goals are at the end of the day, what you're trying to get into. And also, when you're applying to those advanced programs like neurology and anesthesiology, you're supposed to apply to both the preliminary year and the advanced program. Sometimes people end up matching into only the preliminary part of it without the advanced program, which is the same thing again. You basically have a 1 year contract, but you don't have a job following that at the end. So then you would have to, in that preliminary year, basically apply to residency again, but for these advanced programs that you're trying to get into. And then you would end up going to that advanced program if you were to match or things like that. And then some people have also done the preliminary year, found out that they liked preliminary medicine or they liked medicine in general, and then ended up just applying to that same program they're in for the preliminary year and ended up just continuing on. So they would be like, some people, they make you redo the intern year, and then other people, it's just like you did the intern year already and then you continue to the second year. So it's very program dependent how the preliminary stuff works. But just keep that in mind that you do have to have some kind of job at the end of it. If not, you're basically out of a job again. If anybody else has anything to add, feel free.
Thank you, Dr. Obianuju. Dr. Chinyere, do you have anything to add to this?
I really don't know much about the preliminary years. I think I just met one of the residents here that is doing that, but from what I've seen, I heard some of them are just like people that got them or other specialties that require you have to have like a prelim or some to do 1 year transitional or something before you get into those programs. I don't really know much about that because I never considered it and I never really asked questions about that. So.
Okay. Dr. Julia, do you have anything to add to this topic on preliminary programs? Hello, Dr. Julia?
Hey, yeah, I don't know, I was breaking. So for the prelim, usually it's better to apply to program that has both because I did a prelim year in internal medicine before I went to neurology, and my program just gave me both. So I did prelim for a year for internal, and then I went to neurology. And then there are some people that came in as a prelim, like Dr. Biani who said, I knew of a girl in my program. She was going to go to ophthalmology. She started with internal medicine and then she just loved it, and she asked the program if they would keep her, and they agreed. So she didn't go to her advanced program. But let's say the only way you want to do prelim is if you're applying to like an advanced program like neurology or radiology, anesthesiology, those subspecialties, because they want you to do 1 year of internal medicine first. But prelim year is really not that easy to get because a lot of US graduates want to do dermatology, they want to do stuff like that. So they grab the prelim years, and you're left with like maybe really very few programs. So it's better to go to a program that will match you for both prelim and your advanced at the same time. So that way, the next year you don't start looking for where to match, and like in terms of second year. Or otherwise, I mean, the preliminary, like if you want to do, on if you just want to apply, just apply broadly to just hold that as something, and then the next year you can like just find something else to do, or maybe ask if you can remain in the program. That's another option. But um, I think all the preliminary years I applied during my neurology application, I didn't get any interview for prelim, and I just got categorical like in internal medicine, and then neurology. The programs that I got, it was just one program actually, and they've offered both prelim and advance together. So when you're applying to prelim, you also have to apply to advance at the same time. Let's say you apply to 20 prelims, you have to apply. You can apply to as many prelims as you want, and you have to apply to an advanced program. That way you match both. But then if you match one, they will tell you you're partially matched. If you matched into an advanced program and you didn't match into a prelim program, it's going to be a problem because you can't start residency with everyone. You have to start looking for, before the soap ends, you have to start looking for a prelim spot. That's where it really gets difficult because you can't get in. There are a bunch of US graduates that didn't match prelim that are waiting to get those spots. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was very, very, very insightful. Um, yeah, Emeka is also thankful for the input on the preliminary and transitional years residency application. Okay, so does anybody have any more questions? We have less than 15 minutes left. So while the residents are here, they took out of their time to be here with us for 2 hours. So please go ahead and ask your questions. Yeah, so we can still take at least 2 or 3 more questions. Does anyone have a question? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ask a question, and I'm going to actually maybe move it a little bit away from, actually still keep it with the personal statement theme of today's meeting. So hypothetically, okay, if you, let's say someone decides to apply to 2 different specialties, the residents have mentioned, okay, you write 2 different personal statements. I want to ask you guys, is it always obvious to programs when one specialty is more of like a backup to the candidate than it being the, like, is it obvious than it being the thing of interest, regardless of the fact that they wrote different personal statements to express their individual interest in the specialties? Does it still come through? And what is your take on even applying to more than one specialty? Do you guys agree with that, or do you guys just think owning on one specialty you want to apply for and apply heavily within that specialty? And I'm going to let I don't know if Dr. Victoria's mic is working now. If Dr. Victoria's mic is working, I'd like her to please respond to this question. Dr.
Hello?
Victoria. Okay, I can hear you. Yay.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear
Oh,
you.
thank God. So, yeah, it's been a tough one. I also applied to multiple specialties simply because I was an international medical graduate and, I was applying to emergency medicine on the side, and it's very competitive. I didn't get in, but I am happy being in internal medicine. So it is by choice. I have friends who wanted to do something else and they wouldn't trade it for the entire world. So they were comfortable not matching into what they wanted to do, and they're okay with repeating the all match process for what they truly desire.
Oh, wow.
So I think it's a personal thing. I was totally fine with not being an emergency medical doctor. I was like, I'm fine. As long as I have a job and I can work in the hospital, I'm totally fine. So I think it's a matter of preference. If that's what you want to do, go ahead. What I will say is when I wrote my internal medicine personal statement and my emergency medicine personal statement, there was no way you could tell that it wasn't what I wanted to do. I made my internal medicine statement look like that was what I wanted to do. And all my interviews in internal medicine, I spoke nothing of emergency medicine. And when I was in emergency medicine, I did exactly the same thing.
Okay.
The thing is, you always plan ahead of time. So when I was doing emergency medicine, I did a lot of clinical rotations in emergency medicine. I got letters from emergency medicine. I mean, of course, it didn't work out, but I prepared as if that was what I wanted to do, and also I prepared for internal medicine as if that was what I wanted to do. I did a sub-I. I got letters from doctors in internal medicine. So you always have to prepare for all the specialties, because if your research, if every single research you've done is tailored to pediatrics, and now you're applying for internal medicine, it's totally obvious. If all the letters you have 3 letters from pediatricians and you have 1 letter from high end, anybody, you don't have to be a doctor to be able to tell that this is not truly what you want to do. So I think you have to really sit down and plan. You have to be smart. You have to plan. If you want to apply for neurology backup, you need to start looking for neurologists to write your letter. You need to start thinking, what 1 month rotation can I take in neurology? What can I do to show that I want to do neurology without people being able to tell that I'm applying to something else on the side? So I think you have to be smart. Write your personal statements separately. Do not try to mix and match and use the same personal statement for IM, for EM, for P. Don't be lazy. This is your life we're talking about here. Do not be lazy. Sit down and really, really write and tailor your personal statements and your application to that specialty, because these people who are going to read your application, they've been doing this for years, and they've read so many letters, like they can smell it if it's not what you want to do. They can. They don't even have to finish reading your entire application before they can tell that, this is not what you want to do. And now remember, you're competing with the hundreds of other people who have 100 research in EM and 100 rotations in EM, and now you're coming, walking in with your 1 letter and your almost house, they can tell. So be smart. Again, like I said, you can sell anything. That's everybody who asks me questions about personal statement, this is what I tell them. You can sell anything that you want to sell. You just have to be smart about it. Every time I went to an interview, I always made sure that I was able to convince them, whatever questions they asked, I had a story to tell. All these questions, you're not prepared. You don't know what question they will ask you. But, one interview, they gave me a puzzle, and I have to pick the first 3 words, and I have to tell them about an experience, about the first 3 words that I found. You don't know which 3 words you're going to find in that puzzle, and now you have to talk about it within 5 minutes. So be prepared at all times, be smart, and you have to be proud of what you've done. Do not let anybody look down. I was a chef at home. I was cooking for a couple of people, and I was proud when I talked about this in my interview. I didn't let anyone look down on me. I didn't let anyone look down on my scores, on my experiences. Be proud, be confident, don't be cocky.
Yeah.
But let them know that you put in time, you put in effort, you spent money, thousands of dollars to apply. This thing is not cheap.
Yeah.
So don't drag your feet to the interview. I don't care if someone from Harvard is sitting next to you. Don't look at them. You look at what you brought to the table. You tell them how special you are, how unique you are, how their program. You will be a blessing to their program. You
Yeah.
being amongst them is a blessing. So don't think I'm just trying to squeeze myself with you people. No, that's not how you should approach this. So be confident. No matter what you've done. And I'm seeing a lot of, I haven't done this. It's a gap year. I don't have this. I don't have that. I didn't have a lot of stuff, okay? And it is okay to panic. It is okay to feel like you've not done enough. But let's face it, it's not possible to do enough. You only have a limited amount of time. So sell your experiences. If you've had an accident, sell it, If somebody died in your family, sell it. They're not going to come to your village to come and poke their nose in and confirm whether you're lying. I'm not saying you should lie, but I'm saying whatever you've gone through up to that point, find ways to talk about it. Find ways to tell them about your experiences. And I believe everything will be fine. Confidence. Sell yourself and be smart. Okay? That's really all I have to say. And my email and phone number is in the group chat. If anyone wants to send me their personal statement to give it a quick read, that's totally fine. If anyone has any questions, once I have time, I'll get to them and I'll respond. But that's all I have to say for now. Okay?
No, thank you so much. That was actually very uplifting and insightful. Thank you. Okay, so we have 7 minutes left. Okay, does any resident have anything that they would like to add actually to I guess buttress what Dr. Victoria has just spoken about?
Sorry, I wanted to ask a question. Is that okay?
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Claudia.
Okay. Thank you all, the residents who are here. You're giving us a lot of insight into what to do. I wanted to ask this. I'm not sure if anybody asked it already, but does our personal statement always have to include a clinical example, like a clinical case? If you understand what I'm saying. Most people cite
No
that
need,
as a
no need for that. No need for that. I didn't have any clinical case in my personal statement, so you don't always have to.
okay.
Dr. Victoria, can you give us a brief summary of what your personal statement was like? Like, what did you talk about? What was the experience you shared in your personal statement? And how did that tie in with you applying for internal medicine and medicine residency programs at the time?
So I'll start with my internal medicine personal statement. I'm trying to pull up my EM personal statement also because I'm on my computer. So with my internal medicine personal statement, I started by talking about, again, like I said, my why. My grandfather was a doctor. A lot of people in my family, they are medical doctors. And I talked about how that really, from the time I was a child, being born into that kind of family, you're almost, in the direction of being a medical doctor. But I also talked about how I was a rebel. I didn't want to be a doctor for the longest time. My first paragraph was how I, did something else besides medicine because I just felt like, why should I be forced into being a doctor because everybody else is a doctor?
Yeah.
Then my second paragraph was about how I came into a realization of actually wanting to be a doctor, which had nothing to do with who my family or what my family was doing. And a lot of people asked me that question during the interview. They're like, "Oh, Victoria, we saw that, for the longest time you didn't want to be a doctor and you were like that child in your family that wanted to do something else." And it was a very interesting story to tell during the interview because it makes them understand that you're not doing this because you have people around you or people have forced you. Then I went ahead to talk about my experience in St. Martin, which is a Caribbean island where I went to school. my efforts in the community, about, it's a poor community. It's not one of the richest communities like United States. And it's a place like Africa, where it's a matter of cost-effective healthcare. How much can you give to this person who has no money? So, I talked about that. I talked about my interest in global health. I talked about my interest, what happened with the hurricane, how I was able to take exams, a month right after losing everything I had, and how that was, resilience on my part. Who decides to take an exam 3 to 4 weeks after losing the entire property? And, I went to talk about my experiences in the UK, how I love traveling. I talked about the book I wrote for little kids. So I found a way to jam everything in, but at the end of the day, it was boiling down to one thing, that I love medicine, that everything I've done and that I've written in this personal statement is to prove that I love medicine, and that this is what I will add to your program. When I join your program, this is who I'll be. I'll be hardworking. I'll bring my experiences to the table. I'll love my colleagues and be the best that I can be. My EM personal statement also had the same layout. I talked about the other stories. It's not the same thing, obviously. My emergency medicine personal statement was, I started completely differently. I ended differently. I talked about different experiences. So I think, when you start writing your personal statement, write a list of 10 things that are unique to you. I did this in so year. I did this in so year. I participated in this. I was a member of a church community, and in my church community, I was able to teach young women about matters of health. If all you did was go to church, talk about it. This is what I did that, was related to healthcare. I gave medical advices. I provided test kits, for so many things. Whatever you're doing, I actually always say I don't care what you're doing. If it's related to healthcare, you can spin it to relate to healthcare. Find a way. If you don't know a way, tell somebody your story and tell me, how can you help me spin this to healthcare? So that's all I have to say. If you're struggling with your personal statement, book a 5-10 minute session. I don't mind someone calling. I've done this a lot of times. Book a 10-minute phone call session, send an email about all the things you've done, and then let's think together about how you can make this come to life, and, how you can start and end. And always have 4 to 5, 6 people review your personal statement. You want an attending to review it. You want your fellow friends to review it. You want a resident to review it. Never your family. To your family, you are the best. So your family should not be reading your personal statement. Start from your friends. Start from people who don't know anything about you. And always welcome criticism. If they say this is not good, accept it and make the changes. Of course, you have to make the final choice, but always be open to criticism. Don't expect everybody to just tell you this is amazing, this is great, it's perfect. Go ahead and submit. Always be open and be welcome, for people to criticize.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Victoria, for your very detailed suggestion and feedback. It's 1:59 now. It's 2 p.m. now, so we've exhausted our time for this meeting, but I just want to reiterate again. Thank you to Dr. Sheon, who had to leave earlier. He's a third-year pathology resident, for coming today. Thank you for Dr. Julia, who is a second-year neurology resident, for coming today. Thank you, Dr. Dope, who had to leave early too. She's a second-year pathology resident. Dr. Victoria Jojaye, who is a first-year IM resident, and Dr. Obianuju, who is a first-year pediatric resident, and Dr. Chinyere, who is also a first-year pediatric resident. Thank you so much to you guys for all of the wonderful information you gave and being so interactive also in the chat box. We are very, very grateful. We're very grateful. So they left all of their details in the chat box. So guys, please feel free to contact them if you have any questions regarding your personal statement, and I'm sure your application overall. So this is the end of today's meeting. Thank you guys once again, and I hope everybody has a good rest of their Sunday. Thank you so much, and we're done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.